Now to our other top story, new laws will impact how you purchase and carry firearms in the new year.
One of the towns is near Eagle Pass, Texas, where the influx of migrants has been nonstop over the past couple of months.
Is it the most robust, far-reaching gun law in the history of the world? It is not.
I think they said they're making $3.5 million a day trafficking human beings into the country.
People thought that the federal government would never be able to get a gun law bill passed again. They got one done in the last year.
Immigration laws already that exist in the United States of America that are contained in the letter that are provided to the president today.
Korean War veterans of the U.S. have been booted from nursing homes that were sold to house migrants.
Mexico justices hear challenge. Arm rights activists pleaded with the New Mexico Supreme Court to overturn Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's emergency orders prohibiting the carrying of firearms in public parks and playgrounds within the state's largest metropolitan region, and to treat armed crime as a public health emergency. In a lawsuit filed by Republican state legislators, the National Rifle Association, and a number of Albuquerque residents, including retired law enforcement officers, former federal agents, licensed firearm instructors, and an arms store owner, the state Supreme Court heard oral arguments on Monday without rendering a decision. The state is engaged in one of several legal battles that have resulted from a U.S. Supreme Court ruling last year that broadened arm rights, and as governors of traditionally liberal states look into new options for limitations, ranging from an Illinois ban on powerful rifles to location-based limits in New York. A California legislation that prohibited arms in most public areas was supposed to go into effect on January 1st, but its execution has been delayed due to a court challenge.
Now to our other top story, new laws will impact how you purchase and carry firearms in the new year.
The appeals court that was asked to step in and allow the regulations to continue agreed with the district court judge.
The law, also known as SB 2, bans people from carrying guns in 26 places.
Maybe now they've just priced you out of the market because you can't afford to pay those fees to get a permit.
Is it the most robust, far-reaching gun law in the history of the world? It is not.
The orders were initially used by Democratic Congressman Grisham, a second-term member, in reaction to a string of slayings that included the slaying of an 11-year-old boy outside a minor league baseball stadium. Justices of the Supreme Court questioned lawyers for nearly an hour while debating whether to limit the governor's ability to prohibit firearms under emergency powers. There was an exceptionally high police presence outside the courthouse, with New Mexico state police trucks bordering the roadway. It appears that there are, in a sense, boundaries. You need to specify the type of public health emergency, Justice Michael E. Vigil instructed a governor's attorney. Where is the statistical data indicating that there is an issue with armed crime in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County public parks? These statements don't demonstrate anything of the sort. In contrast to many other states, New Mexico lawmakers have granted the governor more emergency powers, according to Justice Brianna Zamora. She also issued a word of caution on the executive branch. What are we not allowing if we allow this? She questioned. The top court postponed making a ruling or a deadline. According to the petitioners, Grisham has violated the Second Amendment by abusing her power as governor and by classifying drug misuse and armed crime as non-emergencies that do not warrant the temporary restriction of firearm availability. They charge the governor of violating concealed handgun laws and other arm restrictions that have been improved over the course of more than a century, as well as encroaching on the power of the legislature.
People thought that the federal government would never be able to get a gun law bill passed again. They got one done in the last year.
This is a violation of that federal law. The federal judge that initially ruled in this agreed, saying it's up to Congress.
And they're saying, they have the authority to do that. The gun rights groups that are suing.
In most public places, even with the concealed carry permit, is now in effect, even as the case makes its way through the courts.
He told me that the new laws go too far, and he said they aren't even needed in the first place.
The legal challenge is also endorsed by the state's Libertarian and Republican parties. On behalf of proponents of arm rights, attorney Jessica Hernandez claimed that the executive orders are so far outside and so contrary to the emergency statuses that in their entirety they are invalid, because they attempt to create a state of emergency based on armed crime and drug abuse. The governor claims that both drug misuse and armed crime comfortably fall within the definition of a public health emergency due to the exceedingly dangerous conditions created by firearms and poisonous chemical agents that pose an immediate threat to many inhabitants of New Mexico. She claims that the temporary orders do not infringe upon constitutional rights. Holly Agayanian, the governor's chief general counsel, stated, "Those are the powers that the governor has, and those are the powers that she was re-elected to use, again, in consultation with her public health experts about what constitutes an emergency." In a related development, a federal judge has permitted the arm control law to remain in effect until legal objections are resolved. Grisham won the U.S. District Judge David Urias's October decision. First released on September 8, 2023, the governor's directives prompted more legal challenges in federal court that are still pending, as well as public demonstrations by proponents of arm rights. The original order that essentially suspended the ability to carry an arm in most public places was gradually modified. This was because the police chief of Albuquerque and the sheriff of Bernalillo County had failed to enforce the original order. In addition to monthly inspections of arm dealers around the state, reporting on arm shot victims at New Mexico hospitals, wastewater testing for signs of illegal drug use at public schools, and directives for arm buyback programs are also included in the governor's health order. Before the civil trial in New York began on Monday, longtime NRA leader Wayne LaPierre resigned due to accusations that he bought himself opulent benefits at the expense of the influential arm rights organization. Texas border dispute. With the state of Texas and the Department of Homeland Security at its core, the Texas border dispute has been a divisive topic in the U.S. The problem has been made more complex by Governor Greg Abbott's response to the Supreme Court ruling, in which he asserts that the Biden administration has failed to defend Texas from invaders. Texas, the Biden administration, and the Supreme Court are now at odds as a result of this. A preliminary injunction issued by a 3-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit, which is a division of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, was overturned by the Supreme Court. The ruling of this panel barred the U.S. Border Patrol from meddling with the concertina wire, sometimes known as C-wire, that Texas had installed over 29 miles of public and private property in the Eagle Pass region.
One of the towns is near Eagle Pass, Texas, where the influx of migrants has been nonstop over the past couple of months.
Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire installed by Texas along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Immigration laws already that exist in the United States of America that are contained in the letter that are provided to the president today.
The right to remove dozens of miles of razor wire put up by the state of Texas.
I think they said they're making $3.5 million a day trafficking human beings into the country.
Texas filed a lawsuit against the federal government in a Texas federal district court, claiming that there had been trespassing and APA breaches. At first, the district court issued a temporary restraining order barring the government from tampering with the C-wire, with the exception of urgent medical situations. Texas then requested a preliminary injunction to stop the federal government from severing the wire while the lawsuit was pending. The state's bid for a preliminary injunction was eventually refused by the judge in spite of Texas's robust legal defense and appeals. Texas filed an immediate appeal of this denial with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, claiming that medical emergencies did not warrant the fence's destruction and that severing the wire for a single emergency did not justify leaving it vulnerable to possible infiltration by thousands of people. The federal government was not happy with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling, so it filed an emergency application with the Supreme Court. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court supported the government's motion to lift the administrative stay. Justice Alito was tasked with handling emergency applications originating from the Fifth Circuit. The order states that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit's order from December 19, 2023, is vacated. As it reviewed the case, the Fifth Circuit had placed a temporary injunction. The Supreme Court opted to lift it, upholding the lower court's decision to deny the injunction.
Korean War veterans of the U.S. have been booted from nursing homes that were sold to house migrants.
Texas border town of Eagle Pass. This is at the center of this legal fight between the Biden administration.
They're here to both tour the border, to tour what we're doing with the buoys in the border, as well as
more than 700,000 illegals have been welcomed into our country illegally.
The Take Our Border Back convoy says it'll be calling on the government to address the crisis at the border.
The Border Patrol was no longer restricted from cutting the wire in a designated region as a result of this judgment. Justices Barrett and Roberts deviated from the anticipated consensus by voting in favor of granting the stay and endorsing the liberal position. The Supreme Court's ruling does not represent a definitive assessment of the case's merits. The decision centers on a temporary injunction intended to preserve the status quo of the law while the Fifth Circuit reviews the issue. The Supreme Court's decision to support the government overturned the injunction and essentially gave the government permission to break the wire in that particular location, which makes the judgment alarming. The United States executive branch responds to the Supreme Court order by claiming that it is required by the Constitution to uphold federal laws that safeguard states, including the country's present immigration rules. In a letter to the Biden administration, Texas Governor Abbott charged that the federal government was violating the compact between the federal government and the states. According to the letter, President Biden has broken numerous laws and refused to enforce them. Border Patrol unions in the region have endorsed the latest Supreme Court ruling, and many U.S. states have sided with Texas and Governor Abbott. Texas is still building new wires and fences along the border, maybe in other areas as well, in an effort to strengthen its defenses. Following the 5-4 ruling by the Supreme Court, the case was taken up by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which put it on hold and gave the district court judge 60 days to decide it. Documents, emails, and other information pertaining to the whole border wall dispute, including the contested wire barriers, must be submitted as ordered by the court. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.